What's up, Bone Ponies? Welcome to Season 2, Episode 11 of the Tabletop Totality Podcast. That's right, we're at more than halfway through this season of the podcast. Or are we? Are we doing 20 episodes again this season? Is there going to be a Season 3? Or is Season 2 going to continue forever? Should we just call this Episode 31 of the podcast? And if there is going to be a Season 3, what do you think the conclusion of Season 2 is going to be? What are your theories about the intricate storyline we've sprinkled throughout the current season of the podcast? Leave your thoughts in the comments, as well as any thoughts about the content of this particular podcast. And if you haven't picked up on the plot of this season, maybe go back and re-listen to the last 10 episodes so that you're all caught up. But that said, I'm joined by my friends.
I'm really confused, everybody. Steve just went for it. This was unsanctioned material. He just flew.
I mean,
he reached too far. He dug too greedily.
Did I?
That's a very interesting name for our co-host.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that changed, but I'm Neil.
Yeah.
I'm Cody.
And I'm Steven.
I'm the voice of reason here.
Are you? Okay.
Yeah.
That's cool.
That's surprising. Usually the voice of chaos.
Yeah.
That's a lie. I'm the voice of chaos.
Usually I'm. Anyway, today we're going to be talking about recreation versus inspiration.
What I mean by inspiration versus recreation. It's hard to tell.
You go either way. And what I mean by that is taking inspiration from various media and using them and applying them to your character in a tabletop game versus simply taking that character and sort of trying to repurpose them whole hog into a character. Like you're taking a character from a thing and basically trying to transplant them into a game and make that your character versus taking aspects from a character and putting those into a character that you're creating to then apply those aspects to your character and create something more original in that way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, it's a slippery slope. It's very easy to try and do that, because sometimes the good old inspiration pool is a little dry.
Yep.
So you end up, trying to just take an idea from something else, maybe an anime show you've been watching.
Yeah.
Maybe there's this cool character in a book you've been reading, How many people, I'm sure, who've sat at tables and somebody has recreated somebody from like Game of Thrones or, Berserk for an anime, for instance,
Yeah.
Which is actually a very easier anime to try and recreate in. Or, you want to be a ninja from Naruto.
Mm-hmm.
There's plenty of stories. We have some, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean,
everybody else here also has some, It's a dangerous slope.
Yeah. I mean, when I first started playing D&D, like every character that I made was a rogue assassin because I wanted them to be, that anime trope of like the dude that hits you with one strike and then you die kind of deal. Mm-hmm. And it's like you play D&D and it's like, that's not how any of this works. Not at all.
You just wanted to be a really like edgy, angsty killer. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's common.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it goes as far as there being like entire like there are people out there that make an entire series of videos about it. Like the biggest one that I know of is a guy on YouTube called Tulak the Barbarian, and his whole channel is basically just like, here's a character from an anime or a movie series or whatever, and here's how to make him in Dungeons and Dragons. And it's like, that's cool and creative and an interesting idea, but it's not really what you should be going for when you're creating a character. I don't think like taking aspects from certain characters is totally fine and makes a lot of sense, but wanting to one-to-one recreate an exact character because you think that they're cool or you like them is kind of destined to fail, I guess, because you're not going to ever recreate that character exactly. You're creating them through the lens of how you perceive them. And a lot of the times, characters that people like are the way that they like them because they're written that way in the story that they're presented in. And if you put those kinds of characters into a game like D&D or any other tabletop game where there's a level of variability in the success or failure in regards to attacking or just any kind of actions that you can do, and you're playing as this character that is supposed to be like this epitome of badassness and this super strong, powerful warrior or whatever, and you're constantly rolling, ones and twos, you're going to be like, why? Like, no, I should be better than this. Why am I failing? Why am I doing so terribly at this?
Well,
And
I think that's a good point. Maybe it's not just even because you had said like it's kind of like through like the lens of which you see them through,
mhm,
but it's also you're trying to take something that essentially doesn't or has its own like if you watch like a Marvel movie,
yeah,
right? They have their own mechanics for how things work
yes,
and what kind of powers people can have and things like that. And
yep,
trying to translate that, trying to do a direct replication into Dungeons and Dragons, into any tabletop game that using existing things
hmm,
is probably not going to be a solid transfer, a solid translation.
yeah,
And it's going to leave the person wanting, desiring more from that character because they want it to do the same thing that, I want to be able to do the same thing that Doctor Strange does, but
hmm,
there's not a mechanic for that in D&D or whatever.
right,
And there's a limitation to their powers because it's its own system of mechanics,
hmm,
you know so I really
Yeah.
think that it's more beneficial for you to maybe take inspiration and take aspects like, oh, I want my character to be a cool sorcerer like
yeah,
Doctor Strange, or I want my character to be really big and strong, like Thor or the Hulk. And you can do things like that. You can make a Path of the Storm barbarian that
hmm,
is kind of like Thor,
Yeah, it
but
would be similar to Thor. Yeah,
yeah,
can't do everything Thor can,
yep,
exactly. Yeah, no, it's a fine line, just like we've been saying, and I don't think it shouldn't be a no-go type of thing, right? Take the inspiration, take it that way, but when you start doing the recreation aspect, you're either going to be trying to make mechanics for things that don't exist, and then you're home brewing, you're messing with the mechanics that are already there. That can get a little nasty.
hmm,
We've done it plenty of times with all these different games that we've played, and sometimes you hit a point where you're like, all right, man, everything's off the rails. All of my mechanics are shot because I've changed three things, and I didn't think it would affect 12 things. You
yeah,
know what I mean? So it compounds over the aspect of mechanics. There is ties into it, but this is why, in a way, there are certain tabletop RPG games that you can go and play and try and play a character closer to that. there's
yeah,
now there's now an Avatar tabletop RPG system, so now if you want to play, an Earthbender, stuff like that, you can actually do that in that system instead of trying to recreate the 5e system or a Pathfinder system to do those things.
yeah,
But in Dungeons and Dragons, can you successfully make somebody who, a wizard or a sorcerer who can manipulate earth, or a druid even, who can manipulate earth and use it to their advantages? Oh yeah, no problem, no doubt about it. But is it going to be exactly like an earthbender that you saw in
yeah,
the Avatar series? No shot. It's never going to be that way. So if
yeah,
you have that aspect in mind, and that's exactly what you want to be, even if you're having bad rolls or something like that, it's still not going to play out. You could be having the best rolls, everything can be going great, but it's not going to just operate the same way, and you're going to limit yourself at what tables you can play at, really, if you
yeah,
start doing that.
for sure.
You're going to have aspects of like a overlord that just doesn't want to do those things, and then you're gonna still try and play that in the mechanics that they have. Things are you're not gonna hit the mark for your party. Your party's gonna get upset at you, and it's just a bad case. But like, I've made a bunch of characters that have tons of inspiration of things I've loved,
Hmm,
like one of my first fighters that I ever started creating was after I watched King Arthur, the one movie, with what's his name? I can't remember it. But anyway, and there's a character in it that's called Dagonite, and all he is just, he doesn't say much, straight to the point, just straight up fighter. And that's the inspiration I took. Is there anything, it was very easy to also, if I wanted to recreate it, because yeah, it is. It's set in it's already set in a high fantasy setting. It's all pretty much just regular medieval, combat. So it would be easy, but even that, I'm only going to take that aspect. Yeah, I want to make a fighter who's kind of a badass who doesn't say much and just gets stuff done. And now I'm going to make a character off of that. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I really, my advice would be that's the route to take. Now I'm not trying to discourage anybody. If you want to homebrew something, you want to create something from a different from a video game or from a movie and make it work for D&D, you should do that,
yep.
because
Mhm.
we do the same thing, and we've done
Yeah,
it our whole
absolutely.
lives. The rules are, the books and everything are just guidelines. So whatever you can make that works at your table, that's fantastic. But we're just trying to say from from our experience from being players and then also playing in a lot of different games, that sometimes when people try to do that perfect carbon copy of an existing character, it just doesn't work. And it could also not work from like a story aspect. Like, if you just like, oh, I want to make Kratos, right? That's what I want to do, is I want to make Kratos. And then the campaign is like all like diplomacy,
Yeah.
role playing, and like no real combat, and like all these different things. Like, does that character fit into that story? And
Right.
I also think that there's an aspect too of like playability, because I think like your first character is probably very, very likely going to be pretty close to like something you thought was cool
Hmm.
from something.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
right. Like your first time playing, you're going to be like, okay, I want to make a character like this character that I've seen, or I'm going to make a character that can do this one particular thing that I really want to do. Right.
Hmm.
But I think that the real enjoyment and like the real fun in these role playing games comes from when you make something that's yours.
Yeah.
And we try to push that a lot, like make your own story, make your own rules. So it's the same thing when it comes to like your character design. Like, I think it's going to be more enjoyable for you and everybody at the table and your dungeon master if it's something that is a little bit more pliable, because when you're also taking like a perfect like replica of something from an existing medium,
Hmm.
it has its limitations already.
Yep.
Like,
Yeah.
it has a, like, that character has a reason for doing something, or it has a motive, or it has a past,
Yep.
and if you're just trying to
Yeah.
transfer that over, you're kind of limiting yourself, and you're also limiting the people at the table with you as to what you can do.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As
No,
And I mean, yeah.
you're not gonna take any, like we've said plenty of times in plenty of our other episodes, when you're creating a character, that background, that history that you create with it should fit the setting you are playing in. And
Hmm.
kind of exactly what you said there, Cody. If you try and do a carbon copy, if I'm going to be Kakashi from Naruto and I come into this aspect, like all of my drive, everything like that, it may not benefit whatever storyline is trying to be set at the table, you know. So it's one of those things, like, all right, I'll take my inspiration from character X and I'm gonna apply it into this real world setting where I already have a backstory made up. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I think that is the best way to go about it.
And it's also a lot easier too for the overlord or the dungeon master to like make something with you, as opposed to transferring something from an existing
Yes.
medium.
Yeah.
To be like, I want my group, like I want my player to be involved. He's an artificer, warrior, whatever. And I want him to be involved in the acquisition and the control of technology, right?
Mm-hmm.
okay, we can make something like that, as opposed to saying my guy works for the Brotherhood of Steel.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Because then it's like, okay, now I have to incorporate all this existing stuff
Aspects.
that comes with this character, with this organization. I have to plug it into my
to
world.
make the whole organization, basically.
Right. And it's so much easier, and I think it's so much more beneficial to be like, DM Overlord, like I want my guy to be involved in this type of thing, whatever. Because then the DM can say, hey, you know what? That fits perfectly into something I have going on.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same thing with Sean, who plays BK in our Talaraxi adventure.
Yeah.
He had a specific group that had caused him and his family and his people problems, and he wanted them to be a catalyst in the story. And that was easy enough for me to do because he left it at a point where he was like, this is what they did.
Mm-hmm.
This is why my character wants to get comeuppance from them.
Mm-hmm.
But as to what they're doing now or what they've been doing,
Yep,
that's all you, Cody.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the teamwork that makes the dream work, baby.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean it's that versus I want to be Conan, and I want you to put the Brotherhood of Set into your game, and it's like, well, now I have to figure out how to put the Set cult into my game. That's going to be a little bit more tricky.
Yeah.
I mean, they're always there anyway, so
yeah, I mean, for sure.
You know.
But I mean, like even but another aspect of all of it that hasn't really been touched on is also like to take it to more personal in terms of character stuff. If you're playing a low level game, you have to sort of take into consideration the character that you're playing and like the character that you want to plug into your game and like their power level versus the level that you're playing at versus the level that they're at. Like Cody was saying Kratos before, it's like if you're playing a level 1 D&D campaign, you're not plugging Kratos in from like even like from the beginning of God of War. You're plugging in Kratos when he was like training to be a soldier in the army.
Yeah.
You know, you
that's a really good point too. Is that like it can't, like, depending on what you're doing, like what game you're playing or like where you're at in that game, it can't, like, the expectation, I think, is another thing that's going to ruin it for somebody that's just trying to make a perfect copy.
Exactly.
Because it's like they can't do this stuff, man. Like, you know.
I mean, like, if you're a big fan of like One Punch Man, you're like, I want to make Saitama because I want to be able to just like kill everything in one hit. It's like if you're playing a level 1 character, you're not going to be playing Saitama after he's done training. You're going to be playing Saitama when he's an out of work businessman wandering around the streets with no training, or even like 6 months into his training before he gets any sort of superpowers. Like, you're not gonna be at that level at level 1.
And doesn't that set the incentive there too?
Exactly.
Like, because you want to see your character develop, and as you get to play them and you get to actually like flesh out who they are and like get their motivations and everything, you want your character to keep going and you want to see what happens. Whereas if you just took somebody else's character from some other medium, they're already kind of like a polished product. And what room are you giving yourself to kind of grow? And I think that's what I was trying to say before about playability is like, I would imagine I would get super bored if I was playing some
if you
other
did it
character,
right from from where they were at from the piece of media. You know, I think it's the difference in storytelling, right? So most medias, when they present a character, yes, there is still, they level up and they power up throughout it, but there's an aspect of they are already some trained individual. You know, they already have some level of skill, right? You'll see it in flashbacks most of the time, what they did in training or what they did, you know, to get to the point where they're at. But most of the time you only see from, you know, that point and them exceeding that point, right? Where in D&D or any tabletop RPG, if you're starting on a low level thing, like you are steps behind, you know, that finished product that you might be basing it off of. Maybe when they started or the show showed you, they're like level 10 in the aspects of, you know, the game, most tabletop RPGs.
I mean, even use like the most common thing of like Dragon Ball Z. It's like Goku starts at probably level 10 when he's a kid. He's like he's trained in martial arts. He can't be hurt by bullets. Like he's invincible at level when he's very, very young.
Even a level 1 character, right? Like we keep saying low level and stuff like that. Like even your average level 1 character is somewhat removed from the general population. They're still somewhat heroic because oftentimes your stats are, if you have a positive, like a +2 strength modifier or something, and you're level 1 whatever, you're jacked. You know, like I think people don't realize that too. So it's like, yeah, you're level 1, but you're still somewhat heroic, you know. But you want to have that progress, like to that growth. Like look at the hobbits when they leave the Shire versus when they return to it after the War of the Ring. Like they come back as badasses. And they're like, we've been across the world, we saved it, and we're not going to put up with anybody's shit, you know? Versus we're really scared to even leave, like, leave the road.
The furthest I've gone.
Right.
Exactly.
Right. And that's the kind of progress that like is just so endearing to these games. And I feel like when you're just going to be like, yep, my guy's Aragorn, level 1. He's Aragorn, King of Gondor. Like,
and it's like, well, no, he's not. But
first of all, no.
It's definitely.
You might want him to become Aragorn at some point, or you might decide that he doesn't want to be Aragorn. You might go a different path, depending on what happens in the story, and that's another fun thing.
I've totally set up characters. One of my favorite characters I ever played was a dwarf, and the dwarf was actually like the heir to a kingdom of like some kind of like, they were once good, but now they're kind of bad dwarves, and he was the heir apparent, but everybody believed that he was dead, and he didn't know that he was the king of these people. And then he had basically dedicated his whole life to being like an avenger against evil. So when that was coming down the pipe, like I remember talking to the DM about it, and it was like, just because I wrote it into the story that like he's the heir does not mean that's something I'm going to pursue. It doesn't mean that that's something the character's even going to want. Because I want that whole thing to develop. Like once he finds out, what is he going to do? Like, I can accept the power and accept my role and like take over these evil people, or I can continue on my mission.
Yeah, exactly. It is nice to see that growth. There's no doubt about it. And I think it just goes to the aspect, like, if you're doing a campaign, even if it's a shorter one, but not so much a one shot, if it's a full shot, campaign, you're going multiple sessions, carrying on for months, do inspiration. Don't do recreation. Don't do recreation.
Don't have fun.
Nah.
There will be no fun at the table.
No fun here. But you want to do inspiration in those senses. You and your buddies, you want to just take a break from the campaign, or you only have one night to get together. You can't really start a campaign, and you want to do a one shot, and it's probably going to be something high level, because who plays a level one shot? Not a lot. That's when you do
sewer goblins
recreation. You know what I mean? That is the aspect. Okay, I'm coming in level 10. I'm gonna be Goku.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Or
you're just messing around at that point.
Now I'm level 15. I'm gonna make this crazy character. It's easier. That's a lot
of fun too.
That's
a lot of fun too, to be like,
bunch of fun.
It doesn't really matter if it's not like, it doesn't have to be a character that I'm going to play 100 times. It's just something that I'm trying out, and I've done tons of wacky builds.
That's the time to do it, and that's the time to mess around with some crazy ideas. B, if you want to really try and recreate something that a character you've really enjoyed, bring it in at those points in times, because that's also when you're going to enjoy it the most. Story doesn't matter. You can do whatever you want. Background doesn't matter. You're strictly, most of the time, just playing a hack and slash of a one shot. that's the time to do your recreation, man. I am just
Yeah.
really trying to say,
Yeah, I know.
in a long campaign, don't recreate.
Yeah. Don't have fun. Never have fun when you're playing a game with your
It's all
friends. Not allowed.
serious.
Very serious.
It's life or death.
It's like your job.
But yeah, it's just definitely, I think, one of those things that there's a time and place for it. You shouldn't try and do it, I think, when you're first starting out, really. Like, take an
Yeah.
idea from a character and try and figure that out, but don't try and just straight up recreate that character, because you're not going to learn much of the system. You're going to put yourself at a disadvantage.
Yeah.
And
If
it's
you
not,
if you're new to the game, you're not going to be able to really know how to do that
well, not even that, but
necessarily, and it'll just like it'll make it, it'll kind of taint it a little bit. I feel like if you try to do that.
Well, I just feel like, even if you wanted to do it, right? Like, you're gonna play the game, you're gonna have fun. That's your goal, right?
Mhm.
But I just feel that you just need to be aware of the pitfalls that come with making a character like this.
Yeah.
Like, trying to do that one-to-one, replication is just not. I just think that you're not going to have fun with it, because mechanically it's not going to match up,
Yeah.
and you've already kind of pigeonholed yourself, and you're kind of dead-ended your story a little bit already.
Yeah.
And I think when you're trying to get into role-playing games, it would be better for you to make something from the start, make something you care about, and then continue to grow with that as you play the game.
Mhm. Yeah.
yeah, I'm the point that I was kind of trying to make is the aspect of, if you're first time playing and somebody's trying to get you into the hobby, and they help you create this recreation style character, you're gonna get to a point where, like Steve says, you're gonna do roles, you're gonna do things, and it's not gonna equate to what you want your character to do, and it's going to
Yeah.
turn you off from the game, because you're not going to enjoy it, you're not going to have the fun with it. And that's no fun. That's
Yeah.
so, where if you kind of learn the basics,
Fun ponies.
learn the basics, build your own story, really give it a full shot. There's a lot you can enjoy from it, I think. And you get it all.
Yeah. And it's like, and like you were saying, like not everything is a one-to-one. You can't really do everything one-to-one, or it kind of messes things up. Because everything doesn't work the same mechanically. Nothing, like everything doesn't really translate mechanically. Like I really wanted to make a character based off of. I wanted to make a character inspired by the character Killua Zoldyck from Hunter x Hunter, because I think that they're really. I think he's a really cool character. I really like him a lot. In order to make a character that's exactly the same as Killua, I would need to make a rogue monk sorcerer, because he's like an assassin, so he's got the silent, he's got like silent movement as like a part of his character. He's also hand to hand guy, so he has to have the monk, and then he has elemental magic, so he would be a sorcerer.
Mm-hmm.
And by doing that, by making a triple class character, it it would destroy it would weaken the character overall and mechanically, because multi-classing with 2 classes is fine, but once you go to 3 and more than that, then it's like the character kind of becomes very nerfed, because you can't really take them to a huge amount of potential.
Yeah.
And so my solution for that was, I'm going to make 2 characters that are going to take different aspects from that one character. And so I made 2 characters who are siblings. One is a monk sorcerer, and the other one is a rogue wizard. And that was my solution to it. So it's like, even if you use inspiration instead of recreation, not only will you create something more effective, like potentially more effective than what you wanted, but you're also going to come up with more creative solutions to those kinds of problems, I think. So that's kind of a another thing that can be taken from this, I think.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, Steve. I think if you take the inspiration path, you might end up creating something even better than what you originally thought. You might create something that you really enjoy, more than you would have if you just recreated something.
Yeah, and you don't have to feel bad about it either, because that is just how art works.
Yeah.
Is that people see something that they think is cool and they want to do something like it. And it's the same thing when it comes to storytelling or writing even. I can't even tell you how many times I've made a character that was like, oh, I want him to do this thing that this character can do, but combined with this other character,
Hmm.
or I want a trait from this figure and a trait from that figure to be, make this new character,
Yeah.
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. No,
But
100%.
I think we summed her up. I don't think we need to kick the bone pony anymore.
No, I'm pretty sure we've kind of covered all the topics we need to right now. Of course, we could go even more in depth to certain things, but if you liked this one so much, let us know, and we can do a part 2 to her.
Yeah, and that goes for any of the topics that we've talked
Yeah.
about in the past. When you go back and re-listen to get caught up on the extensive storyline of this season, you can go back and comment on if you like what you heard, and if you want to hear more from us about any of that, like, let us know.
Yeah. And then make sure to check out in the corral below all of our links that go to our website, our Patreon, our drive-through RPG page, which where we post, we allow you guys to purchase any of our created adventures. There's a lot of content we put out there, so definitely just give her a look. And then we'll also at anything we kind of talked about relating to the medium, like that one YouTuber that you were talking about there, Steve, who does the recreation side of the podcast.
Yeah.
Other than that, folks, I think that's it for us.
Yeah, I think that'll do it. Like Neil was saying, just check out our various medias. We post all of our free content on Reddit, on our different social medias, Instagram, Twitter, and then we have exclusive patron only content, which includes our monthly adventures that we publish, as well as some behind the scenes stuff from Adventures in Thistledown, which is the RPG module book that we're publishing and hope to have done in probably a month or so.
Yep.
Which is going to have 11 adventures. It's going to take characters from level 1 to level 15. It's going to be super fun.
It is
going to be pretty crazy.
Yep. And links to all those things can be found in the corral below.
And I say au revoir, our petite bon ponies.
Yes. Les petits bonbonnets.
Yes, exactly.
Get ranched.
I was waiting for it, Steve. I thought Cody was going to steal it again. You were leaving ample time. I was like, Steve, say it.
I'll let him have it this time. It's fine.
Get ranched again.
I prefer blue cheese anyway.